What's happening, Coach?
Oh, there we are. A little delay there. How are you?
Good, man. Good, good, good. The weather's getting warmer here.
Yeah, I can't believe it's already up to 80. We're supposed to be in the 50s still, usually here in Rockford, but it's hot to see 80, not 50.
Man, it's almost sticky. We've had our the heaters obviously been off for a while now, but the yesterday and the day before were a little toasty inside. We're trying to hold off as long as we can before we put the air conditioning on.
Right. Yeah, I've been doing something a little unusual for me, and that's getting out around and walking. Not much for me in the past, but now I get an opportunity to exercise a little bit and hoof it out there. But that's pretty cool. Something different for me. Tool
Yeah,
around.
yeah, that's nice. We made a walk the other day to Jim and I. We we actually took a walk to go to Baskin Robbins because we haven't been to Baskin Robbins forever. So, um, Daryl's on. He says, "Hi guys, what's going
Hey,
on, Daryl?"
Daryl. Hey, Daryl.
The Today we're doing things just a little different, Coach. We had opportunity to schedule Chris Schlemmer for today or Friday, and Friday seemed to work a little better, and it was a little more last minute because I slightly dragged my feet trying to get a hold of him. Plus, he's a little busy guy, so he was going to do today, but with time restraints and doing some meetings today, he was a little worried about maybe being able to join on. So we will have Chris Schlemmer in the house Friday.
Very, very cool. Great guy. I've been around the industry forever and ever. A really good friend.
Yeah, real good friend of mine too, and he's I've had some history with him, which has been really cool. He's it is what I mean. When you go to try and bowl some of the regional stuff and things like that, he was always super kind, trying to help out. Hey, do you got anything that you need? You covered? Do you need any surface stuff like that? For anything. Obviously he's got the back then he had the big tour players that he had to really kind of pay attention to more so. But
Yeah.
we had the rabbit squads that we had to do to try and get into the show, and came close, but didn't quite get there. Finished 13th out of 60 people, I think.
Sure.
On one of the events that was close to home. 13 seems to be my number. I've done that twice now, I think.
Yeah, I've got some cool questions for him on Friday about some tour stuff and being the rep and ladies tour and men's tour, about some of the things he's done, particularly whenever he's on the live show. But I won't throw some of the questions out there today, but I think it's going to be pretty funny, and I really can't wait to hear what he says about being around the superstars and seeing him in the background all the time with the pad, and him and Del Ballard, and now you got Tim Mack and all these guys. I wonder what's going through their head when they're working with these stars, trying to figure out what's going to happen in the next 3 minutes before a live show and Randy starts talking. So it's going to be pretty cool. I can't wait to ask him that question.
Yeah, that'll be fun, man. It's neat to see a perspective from those guys that are up close and personal with some of the guys that you would see on TV. Especially Chris. Chris has got such a great personality to begin with. To be able to dial it in, so to speak, with all the players it's a task. We have Sean, who was working with Bowler Smart,
Right.
Sean Ryan, who is now also a part of the team there with Storm. Both of those guys know both of them. It's just nuts that they get to be able to see what they see and talk to who they talk to on a regular basis. And I'm sure maybe from their perspective, it's probably like, I don't know, it's whatever. To you and I, it's like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I've heard such great comments about Sean. He's so good with all that ball motion and everything in bowling. Boy, he was just bragging about how good of an eye he has. And I really enjoy being around him in our company meeting. He's a cool guy.
Very smart. Lots of knowledge. I mean, he was a EBI guy forever.
Right.
And actually, for I believe it was a year or two, when I worked in the booth in 11, he was working at the Hammer booth at that time. So he's been with the EBI family for quite some time. And then, obviously with the merger and stuff like that, just things seem to open up and be a little different for him to be able to join on with Storm. So,
yep.
So good for him.
Yep.
Coach, we just want to talk a little bowling today, since we weren't able to get somebody kind of wrestled down for a interview, so to speak, today. And I thought we could just ask questions back and forth and hope that people that are tuning in or happen to come across this and ask questions have the ability to ask away or even share some stories they might have with bowling. I know that between the two of us, we've probably got to have at least 70 plus years of bowling stories or bowling of some kind together. I've been bowling since I was 40. Well, so when I started was when I was 4. So I'm 40, 44, 43. Sorry, 43. Guys start getting older, you start forgetting how old you are.
Puppy.
I know. So it's 40 plus years on my end of it. I'm sure that there's a few years under your belt of bowling.
55.
See, I undercut it. I was like, man, I don't want to put like 80, and then everybody go, there's no chance they have 80 between each other. As far as
Daryl, if you're on there, type in how long you been in there.
Man, no doubt. It's
Well, how did it all get started for you? If I just go ahead and throw it at you, when you were a little boy, I'm sure we always ask that questions to our guests as our first question. So what I want to do is say, hey, can you tell us what your history is when you started bowling?
This is the twist, right? This is usually be a little easier to be the questionnaire instead of the questionee or however that goes.
You're the guest.
Honestly, right. Honestly, I started when I was 4 years old, and my mom was the big bowler of the family. And I think my dad bowled, but he didn't bowl very much. He got later on in his years of life, his arthritis kind of took the best of him, and he had an issue with trying to bowl. But my mom was always the avid bowler in the family for sure. Got us into the junior leagues. Back when we were growing up, there was a place called Skylanes. If you can think of the word now, I mean, obviously now that I'm an adult, you start thinking of Skylanes. Well, I wonder why they named it Skylanes. Well, the place that this was at was in it was in like I guess you'd call it a mini mall. And it was on the very top floor of it. So it's the 4th floor of the building. And they had a place called Devil's Nest inside there also, which is their name of their bar. So lots of people that I grew up, admiring in my lifetime would either take some time there, plus at the lanes. So Skylanes, Eileen Crinklaw was our, at the time, I think, was our person that took care of us for juniors. And I think the one thing I can't remember is how many lanes the place had. I think it was 24, but for some reason I want to say it was more. If anybody that I'm friends with that can remember that, or even my family, if they can remember that, maybe give me some more history with that. But it was pretty amazing to be able to bowl there. You had to get on an escalator to go up to the top floor, and then walk through the doors, and then the doors, you were on lane 24, and one was at the very end of the building, basically. Just a really neat place. They had an arcade room that was the kids, all of us loved to go play at. A snack bar that was like right next to the counter that you had to check in for bowling. I had lots of.
In my era, I was just going to ask you, do you have the flipper pinball machines like I did with the buttons and the flippers? Or are you that old?
Yeah. They had a bunch of those. As we started getting older, they started bringing in newer games because kids were getting, I think, bored with those games. But we grew
I
up with
saw the original. I saw the original Pong machine. So there you go.
Holy cow! Yeah. Well, I remember some of that. Like our Atari, my brother and brothers and sister all used to fight over the Atari. When we finally got it, I mean, our parents were not necessarily poor, but they were definitely, they had enough money to keep us all going and doing our things. But looking back at it, you wonder how the heck they did it all. But eating probably terrible food because it was cheaper, and it was good food, but terrible. But just that's where I started my bowling at, and then from there it progressed, and obviously I wanted to learn how to curve the ball quicker than everybody. In my eyes, my brother was always curving the ball. I think back then when I was starting to learn that was when the pink hammer must have been out. So a little bit of time, back in the day before reactive resin really hit. And I mean, the pink hammer I thought was the coolest thing. The Rhino, I think the black Rhino with the orange lettering was my first ever ball that I got at Tom Kelly's Pro Shop, which would be ironic to me because later down the road I would end up finding work with them and actually working in the Pro Shop and getting my start with the Pro Shop there at Tom Kelly's Pro Shop. Daryl said 47 years. It's been 47 years.
That's pretty close.
Yeah.
We're in that same generation. You and I are using Black Beauties probably, and not these 1980s balls.
Man, I tell you, I mean, the game was more simple, I think, back then. I mean, there was a lot more components to things. I mean, you had to learn how to turn your hand and put your hand in different positions and
sure,
do all kinds of different things to make the ball do what it did. But it always amazes me to look back at my life as far as growing up for bowling and my mentors, or so to speak, of who I was trying to be like. One of them was somebody that you knew, Tony
Fridge.
Yep. He was in our junior program with my brother Chris. Chris had this really wild and crazy back follow through type thing that was like a swirl, like he swirled his hand in the back and then came back through and rotated it. And I always thought it was the coolest thing, so I was always trying to implicate like somehow to make it hook. So right. I don't think I ever did that, but eventually I did start to learn how to hook the ball at that point. And speaking of Tony, and we were talking about potential stories, I think I recall back when Tony came back into town to Omaha, because at one point he had left and went to Lincoln, Nebraska to get an education plus bowl. Bill Straub, bless his heart, he was the head coach back then. Paul Klempa has now taken over since then. Jerry Severson just chimed in and said 35 years of bowling for himself. It's quite a few years. Yeah, it's quite a few years. Tony came back, visited my brother. My brother and him were really good friends growing up, so I always got to hang out with Tony quite a bit from a bowling standpoint. So I got to see him quite a bit more than I think some others did for growing up. But when he came back from Lincoln, it was the funniest thing I can ever remember, and I can relate to it because later down the road I would try to see Bill Straub for some stuff to fix my game at one point, and I wanted to take the next step to be better and all those kind of things. Tony came back and he shared with my brother something I'll never ever forget, and it'll probably amaze you because I feel like knowing Fridge, if you put him in for a 10th frame, he is going to
strike.
He's going to strike, and he's going to give you anything and everything he can that is not less than a strike. I mean, he's gonna be the guy. That's why they always called him Fridge. So he came back at one point and was talking to my brother, and he said, I want to quit bowling. I don't want to do this anymore. Like, this is ridiculous. They're taking apart my game. I have no understanding of what I'm doing. Basically, I'm probably not giving 100% like verbatim of what he said to him. But all in all, from it, he basically said, I want to quit bowling. Like, I just don't want to do it anymore. There's so many things that are going on. I would have to imagine, because I've seen and talked, I mean, you have seen and talked to many college kids, to think back to stories like that, to think forward to where you may have visited or seen the college kid later in your life that has potential of the same story. You can relate and understand why they may want to, because they're going through so many changes that they didn't have before they got there. And it's a buy-in. You got to buy into what the program is trying to get you to become.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll never forget that, because, I mean, even when I went down for my own stuff, I mean, I've told you this a couple times, and I've had probably some conversations where I wanted to sit on a couch and talk to you like a psychiatrist, that I didn't want to bowl either. I was done bowling. I was tired of it. I can't believe that I'm failing at it. I can't believe that I am terrible at it. I can't believe that I've, done whatever. The end result, though, is, to me, that you need to experience that. You need to go through and understand that life is going to get better, and that if you bear down, knuckle down to what you've been trying to do and buy into it, you're going to get there. And so, like, that's the biggest thing I've ever taken from a bowler growing up. And I love the fact that I got it from Fridge, because Fridge is a phenomenal bowler. Like, if there was anybody I could emulate for a release and a rotation of a ball, it would be Fridge. Like, he has it.
All day.
Man. So you got to see him firsthand. So you were able to kind of be able to kind of express what I'm saying with Tony. Like, Tony was special, I think, and still is. Like, I think he's got a lot of ability that people know he has.
Yeah. Some players have just that, I don't know, the innate ability to perform under pressure, and a lot of other sports are that way. Michael Jordan, he was an example. You needed it, and he would come through.
Yeah.
But the Fridge with Team USA, when he was ready to step up there and on the big stage, and I think it was Coach Borden at the time, and you almost knew that this is going to be either a ring 10 or something else, because he's going to hit the pocket, and if maybe that, he'll figure out a way to strike. But for the gold medal and for the team, that's the kind of guy that you wanted on the bottom of the lineup. So, everybody out there, I'm sure you have that player that's a clutch player, comes through under pressure, and Fridge was definitely that guy.
Man, there's no doubt. So I had some pretty cool people that I hung around with that I was growing up with in my sport, in our sport, I should say, not my sport, in our sport. And it really just gave me more spark and more fire. There's in my life growing up, I've got people back home, and it's what makes me kind of homesick sometimes, is knowing that those people aren't really around. I'm not around them as much as I was once at one point. It does make me homesick, because like Jay Watts, who you probably don't know, Tony, Rich Abood, Ryan Carey, Dave Schulte, Tom Kelly Sr. and Jr., Matt Tomsu. There's just, the list keeps going and going and going of great players that I bowled around growing up in the sport, and it gave me the experience level that I feel like I have now. But your experiences, I think anything you do with bowling is what creates your abilities as you grow into the sport. I mean, if you can take a look at somebody else's game and try to implicate it somehow into your abilities, I think you'll be able to become a better player. I know that for me it did. Like, it helped me become better at what I was doing, and bowling on harder stuff, I always loved it. If I bowled on it once and we had a second re-entry, there was almost a guarantee I could get into the show somehow or getting into it because I kind of figured out how to play it. I wish I could have gotten it like that, like some players could. But it's definitely one of those. I played on it. Now I understand where I got to play. Now I understand the surface I got to do. And those are, for a long story short, so to speak, of things that my history of getting into the sport, so to speak, that got me kind of really going into it was my mom and a lot of the other people that I listed off, and plus more. I mean, there's so many more people that were in there. Joe Syracuse just said 54 years for himself.
Wow, you're an old guy like me. I know that, so we're about on the same pace, Doc.
Daryl said, let's just toss these up on the screen. Daryl said that his first was from Union Hall and drilled by John Harper, and his next ball was an AMF Poly Classic. There we go. Man.
There we go. Right era now.
Loving the history, though. That's the history of the sport is what I think I really enjoy a lot. Yep. Just knowing some of the things that we know. I mean, who would forget, or who could ever forget the idea of like Walter Ray Williams Jr. being a brand ambassador of some sort with some company, and then going to win horseshoes, and then coming back to the sport and winning there too. Like it just to do multi-sports, you talk about potential things that you do together. I remember that was the big talk back when the telecasts were on, when I was watching them a lot more. Walter Ray was the big talk because he did horseshoes plus bowling, and they called him Deadeye because he was able to ring them all the time. And he's posted some videos of his house where he's doing some of that lately. I don't know if you've seen those or not, but
no, I haven't. Man,
they're pretty cool. He does some live sessions where he does his horseshoes in the backyard and shows how many ringers he can hit. It's pretty neat. Yeah. Sure. Through COVID, looks like Joe's got through COVID only one casualty in my bowling family. The Rotogrip Reckham was laid to rest. Oh no.
I hope it didn't crack.
I think it did. I think that's what he's saying.
Oh boy. Well, knowing you, buddy, I know where you're going to get the next ball. You're the guy.
Yeah, he's got a special talent. He likes to go on to he comes in to get them drilled at the shop, but he likes to he's got the itch for eBay like some guys do.
Right.
He goes on eBay and gets some things a little cheaper sometimes, especially like things that have been around for a little while. You get them a lot cheaper. And we miss Joe. Love Joe. Can't wait to see you again, buddy.
Me too.
Coach, what did you get? When did you get started, and how did things kind of go for you?
1937. No. Man, I was 10 years old, and 1963 in that area there, when bowling was on the boom. Brunswick and AMF were really, really popular. Of course, like you, my mother was the influence for me to get bowling. Mom was the one that got the call from her neighbor to join the ladies. We could call it back in the day. There, you probably know the Coffee Cup League. Yeah. I didn't know anything. I was out in the backyard shooting hoops. And she said she dragged me into the bowling center that Tuesday morning. And this was a place called Nick Rinaldi Lanes. And this was very unique because they had 20 lanes on one side and 20 on the other. And Mom didn't know how to bowl, but she turned me loose on the low end, which was, the duck pins, duck ball bowling, the little ball.
Yeah, yeah.
And for the next 2 hours, I threw 47,000 shots with a little ball down the lane just as fast as I could throw it. And didn't care. The manager kind of turned me loose because he wanted me to develop into a bowler to see how I had fun. But that was really a fun part about it, and that's kind of how it all got started. And motivated, we moved over into when I was 11 or 12, like all you other young bowlers that wanted to be a junior bowler. Place called Glenwood Lane, Saturday morning, great coaching. Mother was a coach. Got started. A little bit of help with a particularly great coach. And didn't have a ball really at that time, but I had to use the house ball, which was a rubber ball. It was a really smelly ball, and it was really pretty cool. It had dots on it. But every Friday night when I was in there, as I always was when I was young, I would have to find that ball and hide it in the bowling center somewhere because I didn't want somebody to take it on Saturday morning because it was my guy.
Man, we did that a lot. That was like the thing to do. You had to hide
Oh,
your
yeah.
ball if you wanted to use it again.
Yeah, you know what? I ran around, forgot to do it one Friday night. I ran around on Saturday morning, couldn't find my ball, and that was the end of that story. But yeah, as I was growing up, we had a great competitive program in Atlanta, Georgia, if you can tell how southern I am here. But uh, yeah, and we grew into that. And we got into the area when I was a little kid. I know the thing that a lot of you bowlers might know in the old days, we had the patches. You remember the patches, 100 game, 200 game,
Oh, yeah.
225, 250. And every morning on Saturday morning after we would have our awards, the director would get on the mic and would want to call your name to run up to the counter and get your patch. And you know, that Saturday morning, I knew last week I had shot 150 game, and I was ready. And we had our bowling shirts in Atlanta. They were made by the Coca-Cola company, and they were really nice. I mean, they were nice. So she would call, oh, and Ricky Shockley has a 150 game, and I'd be in the ready position to run up there to that counter and get that patch. I know a lot of you guys have been around. You remember these days. HABC, American Junior Bowling Congress, and I still have them in a box back here. I was cleaning out the other day, and I still got all of them. It was a bunch of them. My favorite one though was I beat my coach right on the back of my shirt, which was the really cool one. But from there, you know, bowling we had in Atlanta. Hopefully, a lot of you guys have experienced traveling leagues where you would go around town and you had 10 or 12 bowling centers. And we had a great program. We had two teams from Glenwood. We had called the Mustangs and the Comets. The Mustangs were the big team, and I was on the Comets for a while, but we always tried to beat each other. But in terms of those days, it was great. I'll give you a little story here, a pretty funny story too. When I was around 13 years old, I started having trouble reading it at school. I couldn't see too well. And I didn't realize till I had glasses. I went back in on that Saturday morning and actually could see the 5 and the 8 and the 9 pin. So I was bowling on a blurred triangle, but after that I was going, this is really something cool. I can tell what's going on, or what they are actually arrows and boards on the lane. But that was a pretty big experience. But growing up in the bowling centers, I know a lot of you're in lifetimes being in bowling. You have a job. Of course, I was the guy picking up the trash and everything like that. And you went from there, and then you got graduated to the front counter. Sometimes if you messed up, you'd have to go back and pick up some more trash. But I loved it. Didn't matter what we did. It didn't matter. It was fun. We had wood lanes. Talk about when I was at Kegel for so many years, and John Davis talking about how he used to oil the lanes. And I was the kid that had to pull the line duster behind our general manager that sprayed the lanes with a bug sprayer. Daryl, if you want to comment, you might remember that too, but he'd spray it with a bug sprayer and I'd pull it down. And that was pretty cool back in those days. But I had a fun career as a junior bowler, growing up into the adult leagues and try to get into the men's scratch league. You know, we always have our guys that we wanted to be like. Our guy in Atlanta was a full roller named Jim Maxey. He won many, many titles on the Southern Regional Tour, but a full roller could dominate back then. We was just carving it right up the second era, which was pretty cool.
You know, it's the different when you were talking a little while ago, and you brought up rubber and the smell of rubber. Let me tell you,
what happens if somebody brings one in the shop to plug it and re-drill it? You're going to say no? I'll give you a discount on another ball.
Actually, like we'll just tell them, hey, if you know, a lot of times it's their only ball that they're bringing back in. They're looking to resurface potential. And I said, you know, for not so much more money spent, I go, I'm going to charge you additional cash to try and do this because it's going to stink up my shop. It's going to you'd be better off just getting into a different ball. I said, if you want to keep this one, I've got no problem with you know, keeping it, but generally we'll just pass it off as, you know, hey, let's get you into something different. There's bound to be something that would be somewhat similar, just a little bit more bang for your buck, so to speak.
And if you try to resurface it, what happens to your hands for about 6 weeks?
Oh, man. I don't even want to talk about that.
Rubber was fun. Christmas, I remember Christmas morning. I was so excited when I ran down under the Christmas tree. And some of you older guys might know that AMF, Ampolite 3-Dot, Dick Weber, which was the ball to have. It was either that one or a Manhattan rubber. I had one of those too. But back in the days of the rubber balls, it was really cool. You could hook it about 3 boards, which was fine.
The there was a place back home that not many. Well, I don't know. There's nobody around here would really know it, but it was called Ames Bowl. My mom bowled there for years, and they had back then they actually in a lot of centers had daycares that you could bring your kids, and then there'd be somebody there like a junior of some kind that would look over, or more of an adult that would look over kids while you bowled. You could do your adult thing while you were there. But man, do I remember walking in that place and smelling nothing but rubber. Mm-hmm. The smell of rubber was just ridiculous. And the additional story on top of that, smelling the rubber part, we had a good friend at Tom Kelly's Pro Shop that I knew, Dustin Serrano, who turned 21. On a Saturday, comes in after a Friday night of going out to have, X amount of drinks whatsoever. Didn't know the ball that he had in his hand and the reason why everybody was telling him to resurface it. But he was told to resurface a bowling ball by hand, because you pretty much had to do that with those anyway. You had to kind of start that way with some sandpaper. And he's about like the half ball into it of one side of the ball to cut it, and was like, "I'll be right back." And the jokes and laughter that came from him trying to mess with it, because they stink. They stink. Everybody that's out there that knows rubber, they smell. Disagreed with whatever he had done to himself from the night before. So yeah. That's one of those funnier stories that they're kind of will stick with me from the pro shop when we were working. Your buddy Alan's up here. Says I think I still have a patch for I beat Earl Anthony.
You beat Earl Anthony? Well, I'd like to have that patch. Send it over.
Man, no doubt.
Wow. How you been, Alan? It's good to hear from you, man. I really miss you guys. Talk about some stories growing up. We're going to talk about a little funny story, right?
Yeah.
Just dodging a little bit, but in the bowling center when I was running around at night, Friday night, we had the light balls, of course, the plastic, the ones that were really older, some polyester balls. But on the last pair on 31 and 32, there was a constant ball return. It was ball return, ball return, ball return. And the guy in the back was part-time. He wasn't really there, but on weekends. And after about the 25th ball return, the people down there said, "Our balls are not coming back." And the manager was with me, and he said, "Ricky, go back in the back and see what's going on in the back with Jimmy." So I went back in the back of Jimmy, and these people were firing them down there. As soon as I got to the back, he was taking that lightweight 9 or 10 pound ball and throwing them out the back door into people's backyard back there. So needless to say, there were 8 and 10 pound balls that were missing from the bowling center on Saturday morning, which was kind of a cool story. Yeah, that was nice. Well, I know a lot of you guys out there have funny stories and things that come across in your bowling centers. I was working the front counter. I got another one. I was working the front counter, and I was handing out the shoes. So I was what they call the shoe boy, rental shoes. In those days, believe it or not, they were stealing the shoes and wearing them to high school. I don't know if you remember that. A lot of you guys were wearing them to school, which was the cool thing to do. But there was a gentleman that came in that had a pair of boots on, and I think he had a polio position, and his heels were built really higher on one foot. And so he put them in, and they turned them in, and you gave the room. So they turned in their shoes, and you kept them at that time so they wouldn't be stealing the house shoes. So somehow or another, I lost those shoes. They just disappeared from somewhere. I think somebody saw them. And I'll never forget, the general manager had to pay like $150 for a special pair of boots that I had somehow lost. People were giving me a hard time about that forever and ever, losing these pair of boots. But there's a lot of fun days. Back in those days, the shoe rental was a quarter. I don't know if you go back that far. And I think lineage was like 99 cents a game or 79 cents a game.
It's funny when you mentioned the idea of the shoes, because I think I recall, for whatever reason, whenever we had to rent them, because back then there were times I didn't even have my own shoes for a while. We would just, being a junior, we just get them. Like they would just give them to you and you walked in. I would leave with them on a lot. Right. as if they were like the most comfortable thing ever. But I mean, anybody that's ever worn them, a lot of times they're not the most comfortable things to wear.
No, there's no soles.
No, and you feel like you're walking on cardboard.
Right.
But it's those moments in life, though, that make a lot of us that have grown up in the sport and generations that are, behind all the kids that are growing up now. It's those things that make us all believe in the way that I think we sometimes do believe. We're like, man, history of bowling was bowling when it was this, but this was bowling because of this, and now that the ball's hook more and there's lots more to. There's just a lot of differences to the game from when you and myself grew up. I mean, especially even from yourself to myself, and then myself to some of the younger kids. It's amazing to see how the sport actually has grown. Like, it's just gotten different. I can't imagine that, if we would still be hitting with wood shaft golf clubs, that everybody would still be playing. I mean, the sport has evolved there, even as far as that goes. I mean, the shafts have gotten better for those. There's flexible. I mean, you could go on for days for that probably. You're a lot more into golf than I am, but it's fun to talk history. The amount of things that I remember growing up as a kid are just you never put a price on it. It's just awesome knowledge and remembering of the sport. And like I think when I started seeing really great stories was when I worked at Tom Kelly's Pro Shop. Do you recall or remember Tom Kelly Sr. at all? I think a lot of guys do, but him and his team won in 1974 the ABCs. They won using Shore D bowling balls.
Sure.
They almost, I think if I recall the story correctly, they almost got thrown out because back then that ball was actually, there was a controversy with the ball and its hardness and stuff like that, kind of like what we've had recently with the Purple Hammer and hammers and some of the urethane balls that are getting used, like when they did the Open Champion, or not the Open Champions, but the U.S. Open, and tested all the balls for urethane stuff. The stuff like that, I mean, do you recall the SD73 Classic or the SD73 ball?
I think that one got by me.
So it was a little before, like I think it was a little before the year 2000 or just after 2000s, and its softness and hardness was an issue too. And they actually remade it. They called it the SD73 Classic, and it had similar stuff, like it was just softer. But history of things that you can kind of look back on story-wise, my shop guy, Tom Kelly Sr., would actually, Junior's the one that hired me, but his dad was the one that started the company way back when. Used to be off of 13th and Bancroft, I believe, back in Omaha. It was a little shop that had a half lane in it where you could actually get up on it and throw the ball down the lane. And it would just, like at Nationals, it would whack, and then somebody would come give it to you basically after you threw it. You always knew life was going to be a good moment when the next comments out of Senior's mouth would be, "Have I ever told you the story about," and then it would lead into this super great story related to something that was going on in his bowling life, and some of the things that they would tell us about the high roller. I mean, did you ever go to the high roller, Coach?
Yep.
Was there any experiences that you can remember that were pretty cool to share there?
Some of the best bowlers in the world, and I never advanced.
Oh, no. I have a pretty funny one that I don't know if I would share the whole story very well, but Bob Rust, who's in the EBI booth for Nationals every year, he actually has a story that he shares with us, joking, obviously. I'm sure there's a lot of truth to it, and I'm probably not going to tell it 100% the way he tells it, because he's much better at telling stories. But he apparently some guy he was getting ready to go up against a long time ago, when the high rollers were at their heyday and big peak. He's bowling against this guy, and the guy keeps looking at him and says, "Did you know that your pants don't match, or your outfit doesn't match right now?"
I got a clue who it is.
And so then, no, it was Bobby. Bobby was actually the guy that was wearing the pants. Like, he was the one that was wearing the outfit. And apparently, Bobby had a bunch of his buddies back in the back, or some people that were watching him and watching the match go on. Because it was one game back then, one game elimination. And I mean, this was probably just right before practice ended, or right when the game started is when this conversation gets going. And Bobby looks at his friends in the back and yells at him and says, "You mean to tell me that I've been walking around all morning and none of you guys have ever pointed out that I don't have the outfit on that is matching right now?" And the guy, like, he yelled at him, used some expletives. And the guy that actually asked the question looked at him and sat down and was like in disarray about what just happened. And Bobby goes on to bowl and basically beat him, comes back and says, "Welcome to the high roller."
Welcome to the high roller. Cool.
It was all kind of get into somebody's head, I think. I mean, I can remember stories from people talking about that.
Yeah. You and I, we've been growing up in the industry and the pro shop business. And there was in our city in Atlanta, there was a legendary guy in the pro shop, Jim Maxey's pro shop. And there was a gal in town that had a constant problem with the inside of her thumb rubbed. It was really a blister.
Yeah.
And she'd been to every shop in Atlanta. And they finally said, "You need to go to this guy named Phil Smith at Jim Maxey's pro shop." So Phil was a really kind of a cool guy, had kind of a dry sense of humor. So he took a look at her hand, and like all pro shop guys do, Daryl, if you're still looking and seeing what it was and listening to her complain about everybody in town that had a hard time getting her thumb fitted. Of course, back then, all you shop guys know there was no ovals. So she said, "What do you think, Mr. Smith? What do you think you're going to be able to do? What's causing this?" And he looked at her and he says, "Well, ma'am, maybe it was raking leaves, maybe." So
I'm sorry.
Everybody had tried different pitches and different hole sizes, but I think it was just the way that she bowled. But I always thought that was a pretty cool story. I like to tell funny stories, which is cool. But yeah, it's a big history. You talk about the change in the environment and the sport growing. I hope a lot of you out there are watching. We look at the growth of youth bowling, and it's really on the spurs right now. I think college bowling, high school bowling, and we're trying to develop, in my opinion, to get the Saturday morning programs going stronger and get the coaching part to your level one. A lot of you guys want to get out there and get your bronze. I think this is a big deal to try and get our Saturday morning programs to feed into the high school programs. I know we kind of ventured off, me and you, but we got to talking about growing up. And these kids today looking at these bowling balls and having aspirations to go on to college, which is a great experience. And it's pretty good. I just hope the Saturday morning programs can accelerate and keep growing. I know here in Rockford, we're very, very fortunate to have that. So it's a passion for me to see junior bowling keep growing.
I think so too. Like we've talked many times, like when I moved to Rockford, I thought that bowling was huge here, more so than other places. And I think I've also seen it grow more throughout the states, and where I've had friends hanging out and stuff that are talking. We see, I think high school bowling actually just got listed as a sport finally back in Omaha, which is super cool. It amazes me the amount of following that the sport has here. And we still see some of the downsides sometimes to the junior bowling. I think the junior bowling, there are other things to do, and maybe the idea of staying committed is tough, for kids sometimes, because there's so many other things they get distracted from. I mean, my kid has ADD and, some, attention deficit problems. So, I mean, and I probably have it myself, because I know that you and I have talked about stuff, and I'll randomly, like I'm probably doing now throughout the telecast, is I'll split off onto something else, from a side story, because it's coming to my head and I'm thinking about it. And
sure.
Bowling is definitely one of those sports that I think we all want to see. You and I both. I mean, we've got super big passion for it, and I can't wait to see. Hopefully, see the growth that we would see after all of this of the sport, because so many have not been able to do it for so long due to COVID and stuff like that. So, Alan said that he is doing well and can't wait to get back on the lanes like the rest of us, I think.
Hey, Alan, I know a lot of you people don't really know my history, but Alan, where are you bowling right now down there? It'd be cool to probably know some of the history of where he and I were bowling before.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm really excited to hopefully get back on the lanes. There's a lot of things I saw this morning watching some of the broadcasts and something on Facebook about bowling centers and how they're coming back, and some of them are going to get 50%, of the people that can come in and all the precautions and the temperature. So hopefully these proprietors are going to be on their way back to try to get their livelihoods back. It's such a sad story for some of them that are mom and pop operations and 50 years in the business, and we sure hope that they can recover and keep the sport going. And it's just my passion to see these people stay alive.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's I think I've seen one or two of them, fall because of this, and one was back home, and I don't recall where the other one is. It's just sad to see it happen, and it was going to happen, unfortunately, to some, because how long can you really go without having people come in? It's just kind of bills have to be paid still, and nothing to go out. Alan says Lilburn.
There you go, buddy. That's the house. That's where I have my little pro shop. It's still the greatest center in town. It's Atlanta, guys. Me and you. This is for me and him. Good to hear that you're still out there, and I'm sure you want to get back on the lanes too, if you haven't already. But everybody, be careful when you get back out there as a coach. You got to not go up there and throw the first one as fast as you can. Our body might be a little down here if you don't stretch a little bit, because I know I haven't thrown the ball in 3 months, and that's okay, but we're going to see what happens. Coach, the grip checks are going to have to be there too. But yeah, hopefully get back on the lanes pretty soon. It looks like it's going to open up here at the end of the month in Illinois.
Yeah, we're thinking, it's looking like June 26th is going to be the actual time when centers will be able to, the majority of centers will probably open back up to some degree, right. I think. And I know that you and I talked about this off of the camera. We'll have some time that'll be set up for a shop for us, coming up. Probably maybe next month, maybe. I don't know. Maybe it'll probably end up being June, maybe one day out of the week or something like that, and then for sure when we get back to July, we'll have a few days maybe set aside, but it'll all end up being appointment only, just to make sure that we have the ability to kind of make sure everything's safe and
sure.
All that stuff. But we'll have an announcement for that on our end. Will and I, I'll have to talk to Will, and we'll do an announcement for that.
Right. Looking forward to it.
Vince Chacon says Coach Shockley.
Hi, Vince.
Mark he definitely thought he had that problem. I can't remember what part of the conversation we were at when we were talking on where he responded for that, but
about your body being kind of old, my friend.
I feel like there's sound every time I move anymore. I'm not even getting that old yet.
Yeah, I know, Mark, you probably missed the game as much as anybody with the family and how much the girls are bowling, and you're missing it. You're like the rest of us out here that are always wanting to be out on the lanes, and I hope you're doing really well.
Yeah, us too, definitely, man. Alan said that we are open and been bowled once, but no league setting yet.
Right. I'm not sure how the leagues are going to do coming back. I have seen some centers have brought their leagues back in, but generally, as we've all seen, I'm sure all you bowlers have been watching and telling what's going on, but usually the open bowlers having fun. But some league bowlers coming in just trying to open up again and get their stuff out and get back in shape. Maybe think about drilling a new ball.
Yeah, for sure. I've definitely seen a lot of stuff over in Wisconsin, but they're moving at a different pace, I think, in general, as far as dealing with COVID and stuff like that. So our restrictions are kind of where they're at, and we just do this to kind of keep bowling going and talking about bowling, since we're currently not really working. So it's more of a discussion to keep everybody interested in bowling like we want to be interested in bowling. So,
yeah.
Coach, do you remember when we talked about it was going to be, we probably talked about half an hour.
Yeah, what happened?
I think time just flies, man. I just think it flies by.
I wish I had all of you guys out there that we could put on the screen here with us and just share and hear your stories too, because I know all of us love the game and get great stories and funny things that are going up and how you grew up. So hopefully some of the history that kind of related to you as kids were in your era too. I'll never forget when I was a young boy in one of our tournaments, I got an autograph from, guess who? I got an autograph from Dick Weber and Carmen Salvino at the same time. Ha, how about that?
That's pretty good.
Uh-oh, they're cutting grass out here.
Oh, no. Well, that's all right. All right, Coach. Well, we've probably over-exceeded our discussion time, considering we're not really interviewing anybody. We're just talking to ourselves. But like I said early on, we are going to be chatting with Mr. Chris Schlemmer next week, or not next week, but on Friday.
Great.
Which will be really fun to do. Yeah, we're looking forward to that. Alan said, take care, gentlemen, and stay safe. You too, Alan.
You too, Alan. Say hey to everybody. Brian, I'll talk to little Brian too.
There you go.
Weeks. Cool.
All right, well, we're going to step away and be back at you on Friday. Hope to see everybody. Hopefully we get a bunch of people to chime in. We'll see if we can't talk with Coolwick and see if we can't give something away for next week's showing. So nice. We'll talk to you guys a little bit later.
See ya.
See ya.